A little bit back, a Game Rant writer actually dropped an article which was about some perfect settings, as in locations, time periods, etc., and inspirations from the Batman and DC comic books that would be great for a Batman Arkham game. Now, I'm not going to read their entire article here because I feel personally, this is just me, like reaction content where you take the entire thing and you just basically repost it and take the thing. I feel like that's frustrating, like that. I don't feel like that adds a lot. So I want to take a look at some of the ideas they had here though, read a little bit of it and just kind of throw my 2 cents in here from someone who loves these comic books and kind of say which settings I think would or wouldn't work just personally. But if you want to check this out, this is from Jake Fillery over on Game Rant. But let's just hop into it. If you enjoy the video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments down below about these settings or settings that you think would work. A couple of these I think are actually great ideas. A couple of these I'm not so sure about, but we'll hit it here. And if you want to see some more stuff, we actually are working quite a bit over on our Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays, dropping some new Let's Plays podcast style, talking about stuff. And we also have our RPG focused channel, JayRPG, and a anime focused channel, Magical Jill. So all of that will be in the description down below. But I have a question of the day for you, which is, what do you think would be the perfect inspiration for a new Batman game? Batman Beyond, what do you think? I mean, I know a lot of people dropped that one, so let me know. Now, when they talked about this entire thing, Jake was talking first and foremost about No Man's Land. This one I think is interesting, but this, not to start out on a bad foot here, is one that I kind of disagree with. Now, the reason I disagree with this is essentially the idea is that Gotham is annexed from the United States. The US government basically claims that Gotham City is no man's land. They wall it off, and Batman and his allies, as is pointed out here, work together to keep Gotham from falling into the hands of greedy villains so that innocent people can get the aid that they need. Now, here's why I don't really think this one would work for me, because Jake does talk a little bit about having Batman work as a team with his allies. I think that's a great idea, first off. I think that right there, good. I think the problem, though, for me is when he talks about whether this would be a prequel or sequel to Suicide Squad, first off, can't really be a prequel because, you know, Batman went into hiding for so long, unless they decanonize Suicide Squad, which I think we all have our fingers crossed on. It could be a sequel, but the problem is that this borrows heavily from the ideas of Arkham City. Arkham City already is sort of a No Man's Land inspired story in a way, where Arkham City is literally walled off like No Man's Land and is pretty much no longer part of Gotham City. It's seen as a massive extension of Arkham Asylum. It's an institution, right? It's basically a huge prison complex with all of these buildings and different things, and you have all of these different, you know, Bat villains from the Rogues Gallery at war with each other while Batman is dropped into the middle of it. My issue with No Man's Land is that it would pretty much just be Arkham City again on a wider scale, but with the Bat family this time. Would I love to see the Bat family? Sure, but we already got Arkham City. I feel like you don't really need this one. But one that I think is really good is actually The Dark Knight Returns. Now, personally, I think you could use Dark Knight Returns to then transition with a time jump even a little further on in the next title or a title down the road and make Batman Beyond. So you could have the best of both worlds. You could do The Dark Knight Returns and you could do Batman Beyond as well, which I think would be really cool. But the idea of The Dark Knight Returns, if you're, I don't know, not a big comic book fan, which even if you're not, I'd watch the animated movie. I thought it was fantastic. Same guy who voiced RoboCop, actually, Peter Weller, voiced Batman in this movie, did a very good job. The idea is essentially that Batman is coming out of retirement later on, and Gotham, as Jake put it here, doesn't want Batman, but it needs him. Now, Batman is much older. It would be a little bit more like Batman Arkham Origins in a way, where Batman is at war with both criminals, but also the police are not a fan of him. We've seen ideas like this taken for other Batman media as well. We've seen Arkham Origins use this, except it was early Batman. This would be very late post-retirement Batman, who now the police don't like. Essentially, we've also seen it in things like even The Dark Knight Rises, you know, where Batman comes out of retirement and the police are not a fan of him after The Dark Knight, the movie. So with this, I think it'd be really cool to see an older Batman struggling to do what he does, and he's sort of this outlaw who's also still fighting for Gotham in a similar vein to Arkham Origins. But the thing is, I think the ideas of him being old and fighting time add enough new elements to it that idea could actually work. Now, personally, I would use that to eventually transition into Batman Beyond. So maybe have Old Man Batman come back. You could even have Carrie Kelly's Robin if you wanted to, or whoever you want to do something with here. Have him fight, have him protect the city. I would personally drop the versus Superman angle because he does fight Superman in this story famously. I don't really think that would fit, especially with Suicide Squad. And that's another problem is, like, I think if you want to do any of these, Suicide Squad kind of needs to go. Like, Batman has a very good standing with the law. I suppose you could say that they lost the trust of the government and the law after the events of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But, like, come on. Like, it's just a blemish here that doesn't make any more Batman ideas make sense. What I would do is I'd just wipe that thing out. Most people didn't enjoy it. Most people were not fans of the story. I'd say, whatever, that's a split timeline. That's its own universe. But I think that kind of gets in the way of all of these ideas. Now, that said, the next one is one I'm not really a fan of, to be honest, which is Zero Year. Now, if you have read Zero Year, it's a story I love, but I don't really feel like it works because of Arkham Origins. I feel like Arkham Origins hits a lot of the plot points of Zero Year already, where you essentially have Batman early on, and he is building his stuff. You know, he's still building gadgets, creating new things, and he's going around the city, and the city is pretty much swallowed by nature. And he's sort of this vigilante who's also operating a little bit as a living off the land type character. That idea could be cool. So, like, all of these things with the nature, you know, early Batman, even prior to Arkham Origins, it's cool. I wonder, though, how much this would actually just recover ground that Origins already did. You know, you already have early Batman. This would just be earlier. You already have Batman who's an outlaw. This would just be he's an outlaw even earlier. And it also doesn't really make sense because most of the police had never seen Batman at the time of Origins, which would make me wonder how they wouldn't have seen him after the events of that game, right? If you're doing Zero Year, like, they would have known more about him. It's just a lot of these were already encountered in Origins. So it's a weird thing where I feel like you're just doing Batman Arkham Origins -1 in order to do this setting. I guess I feel like a survivalist Batman, though, is something you could do something with. I'm just not really sure if that would be where to do it. This is one I do agree with, which is Second Chances. Essentially, this idea is a collection of Batman comics from 1986, and it's Jason Todd. It's the origins of Jason Todd, and something that I think that Batman Arkham Knight did well was I liked the introduction of Jason Todd. I think that at that point he could have just been Red Hood to start. You know, I don't know if you really needed the Arkham Knight with the whole fake out. But I do like Jason in the Arkham timeline, even if it's kind of just shoved in there. This could help flesh that out where it feels more natural. Like, yeah, it's a course correction after the fact where you clearly added in Jason just to flesh out the story, and I agree with that. But I do think that Batman lacks the relationship with his allies in the Arkham universe that we get to see on screen that makes some of the other versions of Batman, I was going to say of Arkham, but of Batman, so powerful and interesting. You know, you look at DCAU Batman, yeah, he kind of ends up like a loner, but he has all these relationships with the Bat family. You look at comic book Batman in most settings, he has relationships with the Bat family. The Bat family shows up in the Arkham games, but they are the furthest thing possible from a focus, and Gotham Knights had a way to fix this. Gotham Knights could have been a better game set post Arkham City that is about the Bat family dealing with the ramifications of thinking Bruce is dead and Jason reconciling with them, but they didn't do that. You know, like, they just put it off in its own universe, and it's ironic because I feel like Suicide Squad would have worked better as its own universe, and Gotham Knights would have worked better retooled to be in the Arkham universe. They're the opposite of where they should be, but I think Second Chances could actually add something to this Bat family dynamic to humanize Bruce a little bit more in this version of the character. Now we're going to get to a couple that I disagree with, which one is Dark Knight's Metal. Now, I love Dark Knight's Metal. I also like Dark Knight's Death Metal. These are Scott Snyder stories. If you haven't read them, I highly do recommend them, but they're very multiverse focused, like of these evil Batman variants. To break it down very quickly, it's essentially the dark multiverse. So if something could go wrong, it did. Like, for example, Batman loses hope. he decides that if he can be the Flash, he can be everywhere at once and he can stop crime before it takes lives. So he decides to essentially sacrifice Barry to take the powers of the Flash. Like, that's an example. Or Batman, in a moment of agony and sheer willpower in Crime Alley as his parents are dying, receives the Lantern Ring. What does that do to him? What does that do to that grief-stricken boy in this moment where he hasn't had time to get past it? He hasn't had time to grieve. He's just angry. What does that do? Now, I think that these are really cool characters. As the one person who still likes the Batman Who Laughs, for example, really cool character. But first off, the Batman Who Laughs ideas were largely covered in Batman Arkham Knight. The idea of Batman kind of slowly becoming Joker. What would this do? He'd basically kill the world. Already covered. And when it comes to the Dark Multiverse, I feel like a big problem that Suicide Squad had was that it decided to jump the shark completely, where Arkham is not necessarily realistic, but it's not like super out there. You know, like it's not wildly imaginative on the spectrum of comic book inspired stories. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. You know, it's like parts of it are grounded, parts of it are a little more elevated in myth, but it doesn't ever go full myth. And it's not that you can't, but I feel like if you're gonna go full myth, you have to do it slowly. Like, you have to introduce Superman, you have to introduce the Flash, you have to give some of these characters their own game in that universe. You can't just be like, you know what, actually, we want to just go full myth right now. It would be like Batman, like the Batman, where you have the first, you know, movie, right? And the Robert Pattinson one, it's pretty grounded. And then it's like the next one, you have Batman fighting Darkseid. Why? Like, why would we want that? Like, why would we want Batman to all of a sudden go up against these mythical characters who are like out there in the universe? I feel like it's just too big all at once. That's kind of how I feel about this. Like, it's too big all at once. Some of the ideas were already covered. I just don't really see the point. But the next one is something that could be cool. It's just, again, it's already been done. That's Batman Noel. Now, you could do this, and I like Batman Noel. I like the ideas of this because it was inspired by A Christmas Carol from Charles Dickens. And as was actually mentioned in the article, it is essentially a story where it's like taking the premise of A Christmas Carol and twisting it around on its head and involving Batman in it. Batman's presented more brooding and violent in this, and it also is something where, you know, you put Gotham in the snow again. My problem is you already did this. You already did a lot of these things. You have brooding, angry, violent Batman who is not pulling his punches very much in Arkham Origins. He actually almost kills someone in one of the side missions in Arkham Origins. He's so mad because he starts comparing this criminal to the man who killed his parents. So, like, you already have this, and even, by the way, Gotham covered in snow during the holiday season, that's already Arkham Origins. Like, there's no point to retread that, even if I do love it. The last one they mentioned is the New Frontier. And essentially they said that why would you have a Batman game when you could make a Justice League game? Like, why would you stay just with Batman? And they're talking about going back to the Golden Age to tell a Golden Age story with the Justice League, how they became the team. And I think it's an interesting idea, you know, to have like a co-op Justice League game. The problem is that when it comes down to it, one, if you're going back to the Golden Age, you'd probably want to make it a whole new continuity. Not saying you can't, but that could be interesting on its own, like make that its own thing. Two, my other problem is that when it comes to a Justice League game, personally, I think it's more powerful if you introduce these characters one at a time. Otherwise, you end up with the problem that WB had when they did the Snyderverse, where they were pushing Zack Snyder, like, hey, yeah, maybe you want to do a sequel to Man of Steel. Too bad. We want Justice League right now. And so then you have to introduce all of these different heroes all at once really quickly without building to them. And that's kind of my problem with the Arkham universe as well, with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, is you're jumping from Batman to, oh, by the way, he's back and he's part of the Justice League now, and now he's a bad guy, but actually he's a clone, and you play as the villains, and the villains act entirely differently than they did in the Arkham universe, but it's in the Arkham universe. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're jumping such a premise. It's the same way I feel about the Dark Multiverse stuff with, with Dark Knight's Metal. You're jumping so far from the premise and you're not working up to anything. So it's like, I actually agree with, when you're talking about a Batman Arkham game, some of these I disagree with. When you're talking about a Batman game, though, I actually would say that most of these work. Like, when you look back at them, you look at things like No Man's Land, there's very clear inspiration there with Arkham City. You know, you look at The Dark Knight Returns, that's something I've said forever. You know, do that. And then transition into, of course, Batman Beyond with another time skip. You know, you have the New Frontier, Justice League, that's great. Justice League game would be amazing. I'd love to see it. You know, it's not that ideas like this couldn't work for a Batman game, but I only think about half of these really work for the Arkham universe where it's at. And even if you pull out Suicide Squad, I still think most of those ideas, it's like they jump too far past what Arkham is right now without any kind of gradual transition. And I don't really think most players want that. Like, most players connected with the Arkham universe because it wasn't that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe. I would, suggest you check out Jake's article over on Game Rant, because he gets into a lot more of the actual reasoning behind what he says. So I tried not to steal his article in that way, just talking more about the settings and a couple things he said, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts down there. Also, we have a lot of things I want to share with you. Other channels are in the description down below. We also, as well, have channel memberships. We have Patreon, all of that stuff with exclusive content. And I have my social medias down there. Finally, we also have our own store, cosmobunny.shop. You can use code DJAY123 for 10% off your first purchase over there. Coasters, keychains, trays, and more. They are made from recycled paper from comic books, manga, magazines, pamphlets, inserts, and more. These are things that are not able to be sold by stores. What we do is we take them off their hands, either dirt cheap or we're gifted them. And what we do then is we turn them into transformative art for your home that we hope you enjoy. Take some of that, make sure it doesn't end up in a landfill. Then we recycle the rest of that paper, again, making sure it doesn't just end up in the trash, because a lot of it does where I live. So if you enjoyed this video, tons of way to support the channel. I appreciate you. Many playlists on this channel. I recently put up a Assassin's Creed video, put up some Full Metal Alchemist stuff over on our anime channel, Magical Jill, playing through Sonic right now on Degenerate Plays, our Let's Play channel. Hope you have a fantastic day and enjoyed the video. As always, everyone, stay shui.